Okay, I'm gonna try really hard to talk loudly so that this is audible. I can't find my headphones for this, so sorry in advance for the audio in this because I don't know where my headphones are. What are you gonna do? Basically, I was intending to do this last week and I babysat my nephews and then one of them got sick and then I got sick this week. What are you gonna do? Baby germs, they're germs. What are you gonna do? Okay, so April is one of my best friend's birthday months and she has a baby and she doesn't have a whole lot of matching clothes with her baby. So kind of my idea was that I was gonna get her some fabric because I saw some fabric that was really stinking cute. I ended up getting more of a plain fabric, but it is pre-smocked. So I'm not gonna have to smock it myself and it will pretty easily make a dress, but then I can make her a dress that matches to be for her baby, who is not really a baby anymore. I thought this would be fun because I know my oldest sister, whenever she had her kids, she had daughters first. And that was like a really big thing to her that she was really excited about getting to like do matching. I think it's like a mommy and me dress, I think is the term for it. Like if you like look it up, you can find dresses that are sold as that rather than like sold separately, but they happen to match sort of thing. But you can buy them like in a set. And I just remember it being like a thing that she really enjoyed. And I knew that we'd talked about this before, so I knew that she didn't have a whole lot of things that matched. And so I figured this would be a nice birthday present and something fun, you know, for both of them. But I don't have to do the smocking, so it's even better and even quicker. And since I didn't do this last week, tomorrow is her birthday, and so this isn't going to be to her on time, but I figure if I make it before her birthday, then I'll feel less guilty. So I'm going to try and do it in 24 hours, or basically within a couple hours today, because I think I can do it. So that's what we're going to do. This is our April project, and we're just going to get going because we gotta get this done. So let's do it. Let's see if I'm even in frame to do this. Okay, yeah, I cut my head off a little bit, but that's fine. I only sometimes need my head for occasional use. I looked up a size guide for like toddler sizes. Not really sure. Like with the cross, we're dealing with, I need like an age. I'm just trying to figure out if it's worth like making one that's a little bit too big so then she could wear it longer because it could be worn all through the summer. But I don't know if I should make it too big because I don't want it to be so big that she can't even wear it this year, you know? This says that if the height is like 33 to 35 inches and the weight is like 26 to 30 pounds, that they should be 23 to 20 inches. Because I'll probably end up going with the 20 inches across for the 24 month, but that would then give her like all summer to be growing into it. You know, it's fine. It's fine. I could also ask her mom to measure, but I wanted it to be a surprise. I don't know. I guess I could ask her to measure because I did buy her some onesies. So I'll say, oh, I just want to be sure the onesies are the right size. Let's do that. Let's do that. I got this one made and then thought about the fact that this was super long, probably too long for a baby. I have tried to pin it so it'll be a little bit shorter. What I'm going to do is a zigzag stitch across this part and hopefully that'll be sufficient, but I do have elastic thread if I need to resure this part. But just like any other waistband with elastic, a zigzag stitch will allow for stretch, so it should work. Let's give it a go. Okay, so what I'm understanding, it's telling me that you need to have a 3.5 inch wider measurement to account for the hips, but a 3 inch less measurement to account for the bust and making sure that everything's close. So I don't know, man. Let's figure it out.
So I also realized while getting ready to cut the dress pieces that the lady at the store told me that I needed to cut the smocked part but rip the other parts of the fabric. When I cut the tiny dress, I did not remember this, but it was mostly fine. I think it's because with some fabrics like chiffon, they can fray really easily, and for a reason that I'm not going to look up right now to explain. Ripping fabric instead of cutting it slows down the fraying process. It still frays, but not as quickly. I don't know why. Oh, also you need to stop right there. Before you proceed, you need to listen carefully. I'm about to cut this fabric. Do not cut this fabric until you've sewn at least 2 straight stitches down the elastic to secure the weave. I did not do this, and had to hand stitch the elastic back together. Do as I say, not as I do. So yeah, I put the fabric on the dress form to get an idea of what I was working with, and so I could figure out how much I needed to take in at the sides whenever I stitched the side seam. It's honestly pretty boring and took me longer than it should have, but here we are.
Okay, I'm still like slightly confused how I did what I did, but it did work. And I did get a measurement from her. So we're working off 12-month-ish sizes. I'm like trying to bend into frame because I'm not sure if I'm in frame. If it's 19 inches, then it'll be, oh my gosh, math, 16. And if it'll be, if it's 20, it's gonna be 17 inches across. So we'll do that. But the waist seems fine. I think there's plenty of fabric. It's also super duper long, so we're gonna decide how long we want it to be. But I'm also gonna steal a little bit of this fabric and use it to make some straps. But I was also gonna try and do those straps where they're a little bit adjustable, so then you could have it a little higher or lower per your preference. But I guess I need more buttons. I don't know that I can do that, but I'll just do a strap. A button-in strap. I forgot I needed to rip the skirt as well, so that's fun. I'm probably gonna voice over a lot of this, so I don't know why I'm talking to you. Let's go.
Here I am hemming the skirt. This took me a minute, so I'm going to take a minute and talk about time. You know how our perception of time is always subjective to our individual experiences, and even though there are an infinite number of individuals in the universe with their own unique perspectives, time itself is a concept that will never fully limit within human constructs because it expands beyond our own perceptive comprehension, having existed both before and after ourselves. Oh, look at that. Time for the sewing machine. I'm about to set up this machine in its entirety and then notice that I don't actually have an integral piece to make it function.
I do not have a single clue how this happened, but I have managed to lose my pedal foot for my regular sewing machine, and the other one that I use is making noises that it shouldn't be making. It's sick, so it needs to go to the shop. But this serger has a foot, so I guess we're gonna use the serger? I don't know. Sure, why not? I guess that'll finish that seam too. Wasn't what I was planning to do. I don't know if I can do that. Can I do that? Yeah, I don't know what happened to the foot. We'll do the main dress. We'll do that one first, and then I'll go see if anybody else knows where this is.
I finished a tester fabric piece in the serger and then started using the serger to stitch together my side seams. I was thinking that this was a 2-in-1 process and that I was binding my fabric ends with the serger while also stitching the panel pieces together, but later I figured out that this was actually not tightly securing the panels together, and I don't know if that's on me for not really knowing how to use a serger or if it was to do with actually needing a normal basting stitch to bind together the panels fully. Honestly, the first time I used a serger was when I was making baby blankets, and it was just for finishing the edges and not binding any seams together. I don't actually have any clue what I'm doing here. I just pretend I'm confident and keep on moving.
I just quite literally spent 45 minutes finding this pedal. I don't know why it was where it was, but it was not where it was supposed to be. However, it was with sewing stuff, so like I can give myself some credit there at some point. I was kind of using my brain by putting it with other sewing things. However, not where it was supposed to be. Not where it was supposed to be at all. Now I no longer have to use the serger. Honestly, I don't know who has the bigger vendetta against each other, I guess. I don't know how I should phrase that. I don't know if sergers have a bigger vendetta against me or if I have a bigger vendetta against sergers, but my word, the amount of issues I have when I use sergers, oh, they serve a purpose, and you did a great job. You did. Thank you for doing a great job. I shouldn't like slander you as I have just utilized you and you did everything I needed you to do. However, you also drive me nuts. And I got a snack, you know, because whenever you're frustrated, you should always just get yourself a snack. Take a minute, cool off, eat something. Maybe you're just hungry. Maybe you're just emotionally invested in a negative way. Let's not bring the negativity to the sewing room. This is the thing about buying it pre-done that I did not even consider, is that obviously you have to re-secure those loops. And lady in the store did not mention, hello car, she did not mention anything about that other than that you need to tear the skirt, which I did. So I'm really thinking that maybe if I'd done it on that, it wouldn't have immediately fallen apart, but I didn't have a pedal at the time. Now I do, so it's fine. It's fine. We're just move on. We're moving on.
Since we're moving on, I'm gonna explain a little bit about the friend that I'm making these for. Mostly because I'm in charge of the voiceover scripts here, so I can do what I like and you're just gonna have to deal with it. I actually met this friend for the first time twice. Is that a logical fallacy? There's certainly something logically unsound with having met someone twice. Surely both can't be considered the first time of meeting if they occurred at different times, right? One had to come before the other. Maybe it's more a chicken and the egg scenario. In this instance, both of us recall meeting both times, but neither of us fully understood who it was that we'd met upon meeting in both instances. My first memory of her was when I was in a play with her elder brother. I wasn't actually involved in any scenes directly with her brother, so when he introduced us one night about 2 performances before the show's last run, I smiled and nodded and didn't think too much else of it, because I'd just met about 70 separate adults that I wouldn't ever need to see again, and I figured this might be another person who was at least my own age, but whom I may well never see past this moment, and was rather an introduction out of politeness instead of genuine interest. Over a year later, I was waiting for my sister's choir to let out after having finished my own choir practice, and my mom was assisting with costumes for the choir downstairs, and had sent me along to go find the other costumer's daughter who was meant to be near my own age. She was supposed to be playing in one of the spare rooms upstairs, so I went looking for her, armed with a book and the expectation of sitting in polite disinterest, within the same vicinity, but not directly engaged. I had peeked into the room and seen that she was well immersed in playing, and had fully resigned myself to sitting on the floor in the hallway outside the room to prevent having to disturb her, when she suddenly turned around and smiled in one of the warmest expressions of genuine excitement, and asked me if I would like to join her. With my only alternative being a book, which I had already reread twice, I figured, despite my inclination towards introversion and this girl's seemingly extroverted aura, I could manage well enough for the hour that I had to wait before I could go home. And what an hour it was. That is my first memory of her. It was not the first time that we'd actually met. It wasn't until years later when I finally put together that her brother was the same brother who was in a play with me and introduced me to his little sister, his only little sister. Only then did I realize that I had met her before. She had recognized me, or she at least remembered the me from before I remembered her. And like, how many first times have we met someone without knowing? How many times do we pass someone on the streets before meeting them officially? Memory is a strange and fantastic tool, but it's a rather unreliable narrator in some aspects. There may be one true moment of meeting and one true moment of knowing, and the only deciding factor is whose memory is being relied on to spin the story.
Okay, I got all of the dress done, and I've done the small dress as well, and I have done hems. However, the dress for my friend, it has a lot of fabric. It's very long, which is good because I was thinking I was going to need to use fabric from the hemline to then make the straps, but honestly, it's like even more than that. But I'm gonna do a hand hem stitch and finish that out and get that to the right length, and then I'll do that tonight. And then I can just like show you tomorrow or something. That'll work. That'll do.
Quickest, easiest explanation. Currently, I'm thinking initially what I was going to do was put some buttons on the inside and see if I could adjust the length of the strap that way. So then they don't have to worry about if they want it to be higher or lower, you'd have a little more versatility. And I was worried about the baby's little arms fitting through. Instead, what I'm going to do is a tie strap on the top because these just worried me and I didn't think they felt right. So I'm going to take these off and put on a tie strap. That's what we're going to do. And then we'll be done. It'll be great. So we've talked about who I'm making this for, but we haven't really delved into why I'm doing a whole project on it. I'm about to give you an archaeology lecture. Come on, Snake, let's rattle. Gift giving is a socio-cultural phenomenon, but why do we do it? Archaeologists and anthropologists have spent years discussing this topic, and to be honest with you, I'm still not sure that they'll ever fully crack it. One of the major players in this field is an anthropologist named Marcel Mauss, who wrote a book in 1925 titled The Gift. There's 3 obligations of exchange defined by Mauss: to give, to receive, and to reciprocate. Social hierarchy plays a significant role in how these actions are both executed and perceived, but the exchange act of gifting does not in and of itself require social hierarchies to restrict the networks of obligation and exchange that arise from gift giving. In Reflections, Edmund Burke notes that there is a, quote, partnership not only between those who are living, but between those who are dead and those who are to be born. Gift giving not only impacts the present social networks, but also the past and the future. Whether this becomes a feature of how present generations feel obligations to match or replace with a more considerable thing the sacrifices of their predecessors, or if it is socially considered suitable to have a smaller offering than those that came before. It becomes a debate over memory and the preservation of that memory through present actions to ensure future connection to that same social network. Clear as mud? Okay. So not only are the actions of giving impactful, but so are the objects being given. Mauss argues that quote, souls are mixed with things and things with souls, in that objects themselves can have their own sense of agency. If you've ever done introductory archaeology courses, you'll know that objects require people to give them their initial purpose. An object will always have a primary use period where it fulfills its initial function. However, an object never has a singular moment of death. It can be argued that an object can, in many ways, only die once all physical evidence and mental perception of it has faded in totality. Melanie Giles, in A Forged Glamour, argued that an object losing direct usage with one individual does not mark the death of an object, but rather the end of one portion of its lifespan. Chris Gosden makes a note in a journal article, What Do Objects Want?, that physical objects have social influence. In this context, I mean that whether sensory or emotional, objects have their own level of agency within society, and can create their own network of relationships between the individuals that interact with them, one that goes beyond a social network created by an action like gifting. So we understand now that objects can be argued to have agency, and that they can even be considered to have objective souls of their own. But what does any of that have to do with just gifting something to a friend? Because gifts aren't strictly physical things, maybe they're sharing time, ideas, songs, stories, faith, or just general actions of care. It's sometimes hard to notice that the people around us may be socially networking with us when we don't speak the same love language, right? A quality time individual and a gift-giving individual might need to communicate a bit to understand what they're trying to share. So let's take it back to Moss's theory. Moss believed that objects are tied to their giver. The most common quote that I've heard from Moss's gift theory is that, quote, objects are never completely separated from the men who exchanged them. How I had this explained to me way back in the days when I walked to school uphill both ways is that Moss is claiming that gifts are inextricably linked to the giver, because with each gift, the giver breaks off a little piece of their soul. My lecturer explained it as something that leaves a hole in your soul. When you give a piece away, no matter what you do, that piece will forever be tied to the object you gave, regardless of if the gift was physical or metaphysical, and whether or not the individual taking it accepts and reciprocates that gift. Likewise, while the gift giver may receive other gifts from the person that they gifted to or from other individuals entirely, they may be able to patch together their soul in a myriad of fabric scraps, creating a whole quilt, but none of those pieces will ever perfectly fit back into the space where other gifts have left. The risk of gifting anything is the risk of losing pieces of your deepest self. So why do we still gift? Because despite the risk that could arguably outweigh the reward, there are people in life worth risking a bit of yourself for. People who matter so much, in fact, that you would irreparably tear a part of yourself out, just to offer it to them without expectation of replacement parts. It's one of the truest base instincts of humanity, to seek out connection with those around us. And gifting, in whatever format we do it, is one way that we network connections, across distance, across time itself, to allow us to feel closer to someone even amidst such a big universe.
There's a car. Ugh. Oh goodness.